Tonight on Talking Points, White House infighting continues with the Trump administration, and Kellyanne Conway is the newest target of ridicule.
We should be making sure that people who are coming in as appointees of the president support the president's agenda.
Iraqi forces are advancing on ISIS territory, encouraging U.S. officials about Iraq's strength in the face of the terror group.
I imagine we'll be in this fight for a while and we'll stand by each other.
And Scott Pruitt is the new head of the EPA. He promises to scrap some current regulations, but what will that mean for the environment?
Those that we regulate ought to know what's expected of them so that they can plan and allocate resources to comply.
All that and more ahead.
Good evening, Syracuse. I'm Josh Carney.
And I'm Mike Riccardi. We begin tonight by taking a look at Trump's new immigration memorandum.
The Trump administration continues to push new immigration policy despite the rejection of the travel ban executive order.
Two new memos issued from the Department of Homeland Security indicate that there will be increased spending and dedication of resources to secure the southern stretch of the U.S. border. The memos indicate the hiring of 10,000 new customs enforcement agents, along with the hiring of 5,000 new customs and border protection agents.
The documents prioritize strict regulations validating deportation for anyone who poses a, quote, risk to public safety or national security, end quote. In addition to these memos, President Trump is set to issue a second executive order in response to the previous order that got halted in court.
The details are still unknown, but the order is expected sometime next week. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer addressed the order on Tuesday. Take a look. Tonight on Talking Points. Tonight on Talking Points. So Sean Spicer basically said that the new executive order was going to follow the same basic legal procedures that were outlined in the court ruling. So they're going to hope that it's going to not face the same sort of strict challenges that the previous executive order faced.
Right. I think the biggest thing was the regional disputes that it was having in terms of it being either a cultural or religious discrepancy and somewhat of a unconstitutionality to them actually letting people in from certain areas based on certain tests. So this actually just shows more of a commitment in terms of resources rather than a commitment in terms of political capital.
During his press briefing today, Sean Spicer acknowledged that they consulted a lot of departments and agencies to face these challenges, and that even though President Trump believed that the first ones did pass the legal test, that this one will operate more smoothly in the future.
Absolutely. Ahead, we'll discuss controversies surrounding Trump's top aides. Don't go away.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
General H.R. McMaster is President Trump's new national security advisor, but his top two choices turned the job down, citing disorganization in his cabinet. This is a further example of the apparent infighting within the Trump White House. Here to break down this and more is Talking Point's political correspondent Dan Prager. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Great to be back.
So a lot of people have been saying that the Trump White House is in disarray, it's in chaos. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is. Not as chaotic as people might think. Things aren't lit on fire and burning. But yes, there is a little bit of chaos and disorganization. There's a learning curve. A lot of the people in Trump's administration haven't been in politics before. And honestly, Trump says that he enjoys having that chaos. He thinks the competition makes people work better. So he's kind of approving it. It's not something that he thinks is bad. He enjoys chaos in his business. He enjoys it in his administration.
In terms of chaos, or rather organized chaos, are aides within the Trump White House starting to split into groups?
Oh, they absolutely are. It may not be as much as people are reporting, but there are definitely camps within the Trump administration. Probably the biggest one right now is the Conway-Spicer kind of infighting. Conway is seen by some as wanting to maybe take Spicer's job, move more into the inner circle. You also see fighting between Priebus and Bannon. There were a lot of fights between Flynn when he was still in the administration and a lot of other aides. A lot of people are kind of jockeying for position and trying to get closer to Trump, and they're doing that by trying to take other people out.
Right, absolutely.
Well, like you said with Kellyanne Conway and Sean Spicer, on Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, they actually banned Kellyanne Conway from coming on their show, and they said that Kellyanne Conway is like a rogue agent, that she's actually going on making these media requests. So my question is, what kind of effect does this have on day-to-day operations, all of this infighting?
Well, the rogue agent thing is something that Trump really does not appreciate or enjoy in his administration. That's going to hurt Conway some way down the line. But some of the other things with this infighting, with kind of the disorganization where not everybody knows the same thing, that's one of the effects, honestly, is that they don't all know the same thing. But it also contributes a lot to leaks. Most of the leaks are probably coming from Obama appointees, but some of them are definitely coming from people who want to take out the people that are more in the inner circle. They want to get that position, so they're trying to take other people down.
Now, in terms of individuals within that inner circle or throughout the administration, is there anybody who's of note that's staying out of the fighting?
Vice President Pence is actually trying to stay as far out of that as possible. But there's a big downside to that, because now that he's staying out of it, he's kind of out of the inner circle. When he was lied to by Flynn, one of the reasons that he might not have known what was really going on in that situation is all the fighting and all the kind of separation of information. He wasn't part of any group, so he probably had less information than a vice president should.
Right. Thank you for the insight, Dan. Well, Scott Pruitt is officially the new head of the EPA, and the Trump administration has made it clear that they're looking to roll back or cut many of the environmental policies former President Obama supported. In a speech on Tuesday, Pruitt outlined what he hopes to accomplish as head of the EPA. Talking Point's science and technology contributor, Josh Feinblatt, is here to tell us more. Josh, thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Now, the vote for Pruitt to become head of the EPA was pretty close, but what are the controversies that are surrounding him?
So it was not an easy vote. It ended up being 52 to 46. The two Democrats that jumped over were from North Dakota and West Virginia, so clearly their main interests were in the coal and oil that were there, that are in their home states respectively. So Scott Pruitt is not the traditional, let's just say you don't really sue your future employer 14 times if you get a job with that future employer, and that's exactly what Scott Pruitt did as Attorney General of Oklahoma. He's questioned the science behind climate change, so that it doesn't usually fit in with the head of the EPA.
Kind of like fighting from within the belly of the beast, in his view.
Sure.
So we saw some emails come out after the vote took place, so they weren't discussed prior to that. What kind of effects is this having?
Yeah, so the timeline is that the Republicans were sort of rushing this through because they knew that these were going to come out. The emails, about 7,500 pages of them, came out just on Tuesday. Pruitt was confirmed the end of last week. Basically, he was withholding public records for about 2 years of emails, and in those emails he has tons of stuff that has him cozying up to the Koch brothers. There's even an example of one time his power went out, and he emailed one of the power companies saying, hey, when's my power going to come back on? And they sent a crew right over there.
Now, aside from all those various inconveniences for what people were able to critique him on. Trump has prioritized what is regulatory rampage, as he calls it, and the fact that there was even a bill to get rid of the EPA at one point. Now, what impact is this going to have with Pruitt taking office as the new EPA administrator?
Yeah, so it's no secret that the Trump administration wants Pruitt to try and shrink the EPA. He sued the EPA so many times because he wanted to take back that, what they say, overreach from the EPA. One of the big things is that he wants to get rid of the Clean Power Plan, one of the big things that the Obama administration did. But it's not going to be easy. There's rumors that Trump might sign an executive order. It wouldn't be just easy getting rid of it. He would have to replace it with something sort of similar. And it takes a while. I mean, the Clean Power Plan was introduced in June of 2014 and finally put in place in 2015.
And I think one of the biggest things is that people say that he might step back from the Paris climate talks.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for being here, Josh.
No problem.
Coming up, we'll look at Iraqi forces advancing on Mosul in the fight against ISIS. Stay with us.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
In January, Iraqi forces managed to take back eastern Mosul from the Islamic State. Last week, they launched an attack on the western part of the city in hopes of speeding up the potential defeat of ISIS. Talking Points correspondent Zina Saifi is here to tell us what the battle looks like and what it means for the future of Iraq. Zina, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So how is this battle shaping up, and do the Iraqi forces have enough troops to overtake this?
So experts say that the fight for the western part of Mosul is going to be harder just because the troops there that ISIS has are much stronger. Satellite images also show that the streets are much narrower, so it's harder for armored vehicles to pass through. On the upside, however, in the fight for the eastern part of the city, whenever the ISIS troops were attacked, they can just go to the west side. Now they're kind of pigeonholed, they don't have any escape route, and they're basically caught between either surrendering or dying, basically.
So if they do take Mosul, what comes next? I mean, how detrimental would this be to ISIS?
Basically, what happens next is more they need reconciliation and reconstruction. You know, Iraq has been so devastated by the war, especially Mosul. Another thing is basically who's going to fill the vacuum after ISIS's departure. With the ethnic and sectarian fault line between the Kurds, the Sunnis, the Christians, who's going to take over? As for what that means for ISIS, even if ISIS is defeated in Mosul, that doesn't mean that the deep-rooted ideology is going to be eradicated, because, as they say, you can't kill an ideology with a bullet. You need to kill it with an even better ideology.
Right, and with the amount of moving pieces now coming to this conflict, we see Trump's new national security advisor, H.R. McMaster. What does he think of the situation?
So he has a hard stance on ISIS. He even slammed Obama for being not sending too many troops into the region. He kind of likened ISIS and their terrorist groups to the Nazis, and that they're a threat to the entire humanity. So he's moving forward, he's trying to push the administration to send in more troops, basically.
Thank you, Zina.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Earlier this week, President Trump suggested immigration in Sweden was causing serious problems. Swedish leaders were confused by the president's comments, followed by protests in Stockholm. Take a listen to what the Swedish Prime Minister had to say.
I was, like many others, I believe, surprised by the comments made about Sweden this weekend.
Here to tell us more about the president's comments and the Swedish response is Talking Points contributor Morgan Trow. Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So why exactly are these protests erupting in Sweden?
These protests are happening because everyone is upset with what Trump said. He said that they, quote, took in large numbers of immigrants. They're having problems like never thought possible, end quote. Basically saying that with no facts that Sweden is having problems with their immigration.
And then what are some of the hard statistics on the actual immigration policies within Sweden?
The actual immigration policies actually show that there has been a decrease in crime despite having 100,000+ new people in the country. The crime rate has gone down 2.4% from 2016 to 2014.
Well, as they say, correlation does not prove causation, so either way, there's not a great deal there. What prompted President Trump to make these comments?
President Trump was actually, he cited a alt-right documentary saying that Sweden was lying and covering up different types of crime that they're saying, even though the Swedish crime survey reports that they're approximately the same level of crime despite the added 100,000 people in 2005.
Thank you, Morgan. We'll be right back.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent. We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness. I am a witness. I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
This Saturday, the Democratic National Committee plans to elect a new chairman. Galat, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having
me. Sorry for those technical difficulties.
Fine.
So the DNC is electing a new chairman to lead the Democratic Party.
Yes.
So we have 8 people, 8 candidates. Who's leading that race?
So there's 2 main frontrunners. It's Tom Perez, former Secretary of Labor, and Keith Ellison, a Democratic representative of Minnesota. Then kind of in the middle tier, you have Jamie Harrison, who's a former South Carolina Democratic Party chair. Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And then kind of squeaking by is Sally Boynton Brown. And then the other 3 candidates have no committed voters, according to an AP poll that they conducted. So 5 people you're looking at.
Now, considering the tremendous loss the Democratic Party suffered in November and
Yes.
the fact that the party leader in Barack Obama has now retired from his main job, what are the candidates' plans for getting this party back on track?
So all of the candidates say they have a 50-state strategy, and Howard Dean, who of course coined that strategy and created it, actually endorses Pete Buttigieg. And what Pete Buttigieg says about himself of his strategy is get millennials out to vote. Millennials are now, not the future, and he's only 35, so he thinks he could do that. He's also gay and from a red state, Indiana, where Mike Pence is, of course, from. Then Ellison, of course, is more of a grassroots movement backed by Bernie Sanders very early on, right after the election, really. And then Tom Perez is more of your typical establishment candidate. He was in the Obama and Clinton White Houses. So definitely he's really banking on his experience in government already to lead the Democratic Party.
So it seems like there's a lot of alternative routes to that.
Yeah.
So the candidates had a debate last night. What were some of the big issues?
Obviously, Donald Trump and how you're going to deal with the Trump White House is a big issue. And Ellison was pretty bold, saying that he thinks there are already reasons for Donald Trump to be impeached. He said on the first day in office, Trump violated the emoluments clause, so he's not opposed to impeachment, really. Perez kind of also took a very active, aggressive stance towards Trump. Buttigieg, on the other hand, he said, yes, Trump is the enemy, but he's not the main one. There's tons of other people in the White House. Another big thing they were talking about, of course, is how to get Senate seats in 2018. Harrison said, we don't want to fight against each other. I don't want too many people running. The other candidates were more like whoever wants to run can run.
Interesting. So what is going to be the main problem that the next chairman is going to have to address?
I think the midterm elections. The reality is Trump doesn't look like he's getting impeached anytime soon, even if they want him to. So the only way to fight back against him is to try to get a majority back, or definitely not lose more seats. There are 10 Democratic senators up for re-election in 2018 in states that Trump won. And the only way to really get those seats back, you have to do two things. You have to unite the party, get establishment and progressives to come together, and you also have to get people to vote.
So real quick, out of all the candidates, who do you think has the best chance of winning?
It's Perez and Ellison. It's one of them, but Buttigieg, don't sleep on him. I think he's a dark horse. I think he has a lot going for him, and I think the debate helped him, and he picked up a lot of endorsements. He has a lot of, Howard Dean endorsing him, and he might surprise you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
After spending the past 4 months in Nepal, an SU alum is bringing his nonprofit mission back to Syracuse. Talking Point's local correspondent Ray Marek explains the next big steps this team is taking and the role Bill Clinton plays in it.
Amid the silence of the library is a space where students are actually making a lot of noise. It's the Black Pad Launch, an area dedicated to the school's most passionate entrepreneurs. Ryan Brinkerhoff is co-chair of the Thrive Project, a non-for-profit organization with a reach stretching far beyond Syracuse University.
So recently I just returned from Nepal. We are going to check up. This is where we start our operations.
Google it. That's what Americans are doing. When they don't know something, the first thing they do is Google.
Him and his team are there with one objective: to bring electric energy to local neighborhoods. They started with teaching 30 students how to use this prototype.
They took 3 energy systems that we showed them how to build from kind of spare parts like car batteries, motorcycle bus bars, and they actually ran about a quarter mile worth of wire throughout the community, lighting 16 streetlights.
Now they are hoping to bring their mission back home to Syracuse. They are partnering up with Interfaith Works, which has a refugee resettlement program. They've had to dramatically reduce the number of refugees they let in.
In October, it was 80. The months following, it was between 50 and 60. And in February, it's only 7.
The next step is critical.
We will be representing Syracuse against almost 70 other teams from Harvard, Yale, MIT.
The prize? $1 million from the Clinton Global Initiative. Now, the co-founders tell me they're very interested in keeping this not-for-profit going past this year, but it also all depends on whether they can win that $1 million and get to speak to the Clintons this coming March. Reporting from Syracuse, Ray Marek, CitrusTV.
Well, despite our best efforts, we can't cover everything that happened this week in just 30 minutes.
However, we here at Talking Points think it's important to pay attention to the stories that aren't getting as much coverage, so here are some that fell through the cracks. A federal judge is ordering the Onondaga County Justice Center to temporarily stop putting 16 and 17-year-olds in solitary detention. The decision comes in response to a request to immediately halt the practice while a lawsuit plays out in federal court. The lawsuit alleges that solitary confinement for 23 hours a day is harmful to development and deprives inmates of constitutional rights under the 8th and 14th Amendments.
The 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals holds that a Maryland law banning assault weapons does not violate the Second Amendment. The opinion states that the ruling in D.C. versus Heller makes it clear that the weapons banned by the law are not protected by the Second Amendment.
The dissenting opinion says that the ruling is a threat to the right to keep and bear arms. At this time, it is unclear whether or not the ruling will be appealed.
Welsh politicians are seeking an explanation from the U.S. Embassy in London after a British Muslim teacher was prevented from boarding a flight to the U.S. on a school trip. Juhel Mia was born an English citizen and does not have any dual citizenship.
Iceland Air said they removed him based on recommendation from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. The U.S. has yet to provide a reason for the removal, and Welsh officials are calling it a discriminatory act.
President Trump's administration is reserving protections for transgender students put in place by the Obama administration. The previous position was that non-discrimination laws protect a student's right to use the gender bathroom that they identify with.
In a joint letter, the Education Department and the Justice Department said that the previous administration's position did not respect state and local rights to have control over education policy.
After a short break, Josh and I will discuss stories we'll be following next week.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. You're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Go, okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. So wet.
To end the night, Mike and I are taking a look ahead at how certain members of the Trump team will be able to influence policy and messaging moving forward.
Vice President Mike Pence addressed European Union officials in Brussels on Monday to present a message of prolonged partnership and cooperation. However, reports say White House strategist and National Security Council member Steve Bannon told a German envoy that the EU is a flawed institution. The contradicting messages pose a challenge to European leaders. After Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster was appointed as President Trump's national security advisor, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer addressed how much control McMaster would have over the Security Council. Take a look.
We'll have 100%. The President has been very, very clear with that. He is the national security advisor, and he will have whatever he needs to implement a successful team.
Now that McMaster is in charge, I'm watching to see what role Steve Bannon will continue to play on the council.
With CPAC on the horizon, the annual meeting of the minds for the party base of the GOP, I'll be looking ahead to how the Trump administration appeals to the base of the party. Throughout the first few weeks of the Young administration, there has been critique of dueling sides within the West Wing. Bannon's alt-right agenda driving strategy, coupled with Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and Vice President Pence elevating the base issues. President Trump has managed to string both sects of the party along and has provided room to shift political action even further to the right. With anybody who is anybody in the administration speaking at CPAC, Priebus and Bannon included, it will be interesting to see how the brain trust of the operation presents itself in the face of the party elite and GOP faithful. CPAC offers the first status check for the Trump team to unveil how their messaging and ideas are being received by the base of the party and how effectively such policies are being implemented.
That's all the time we have tonight on Talking Points.
Be sure to follow CitrusTV News on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
For Talking Points, I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. Good night, Syracuse.